We're going to dive into the judging criteria for the figure division today. It's been a requested video. A lot of you have been asking me to do this, and I'm going to do it for you. So keep those requests coming and let me know what you want to know more about. We're going to be drawn on the screen here, and I'm basically going to explain to you exactly what the judges want to see in figure division as far as muscularity, conditioning, and everything else. And we're going to kind of just dive deep. So let's get right into it, okay? So figure division. When we talk about divisions like we have before, you know, I talk about bikini a lot, I talk about wellness a lot. We don't do a ton of figure content, but we're going to get into more of it. Figure is the division that is right above as far as, you know, muscularity, conditioning, everything like that. It's really above, you know, in a sense, wellness, okay? Because wellness, for example, has a lot more lower body muscle than bikini does. Bikini's kind of the intro into the whole women's divisions. Then there's wellness, and these things are very similar, bikini and wellness, but figure starts taking it up a notch. This is where we start seeing the, you know, the women in these divisions being a lot more muscular. There's a lot more focus on the development of specific muscle groups that maybe are not as, you know, developed as much in the other divisions. And this is where we kind of start climbing the ladder up into the, you know, conditioning, muscularity, and everything else. So if you're looking at the screen here, I'm about to start drawing for you. We're going to talk exactly about this. So this is Sid, who is the Miss Olympia figure winner. Okay, she's won a lot. She's a very successful figure athlete, and she pretty much exemplifies exactly the criteria. You do not need to look like her to be competitive at the NPC level. Even in the IFBB, you can still be competitive and not look like this, but this does exemplify the criteria in the best way to kind of show you exactly what the top is, what the judges want to see. That trickles all the way down, even if it's going to be your, you know, your first show or something like that. The criteria doesn't change. What does is the quality of the athletes at the event. So let's talk a little bit about figure. So figure, the first thing you're going to notice that's going to stand out in the figure division realistically is what we call the V taper. Okay, so if you look at the screen here, this V taper comes from the width up top and it tapers down into that narrow waist. And we talked a little bit about this with some of the other divisions, but V taper is a huge thing here in figure division. And you're going to see this in the front and the back when we review this. Now, this comes from a few different muscle groups primarily, okay? One that is going to punch you right in the face if you're looking at the screen here, it's going to be the lats, okay? So the lats become very, very important for creating this V taper. You want to have that width to the lats, but also you want to have good depth to it, okay? You'll see what we mean when we get to the back, but the density of that muscularity is very important, okay? Lats for sure, though, you got to be hitting there pretty hard. Now, another thing that's going to blatantly come right out in your face is these cannonball delts, okay? These deltoids have to be developed. They have to be rounded. They have to have that nice shape, that kind of capping effect. You know, really, that's what they want to see. Figure's all about symmetry, by the way. When we're talking about upper body, lower body, we'll talk more as we go down here in just a second, but it's all about symmetry. Literally upper to lower, left to right, everywhere. All of the muscle groups have to be symmetrical. So the shoulders, like we just talked about, they're capped out, they're rounded. You know, it's almost like figure development shoulders. You could use them as, you know, earmuffs or something like that if you get cold in the winter, because you got to have some density to those shoulders. Now, with that is always going to come some muscularity at the arms and things like that. You have to have that in this division. Muscle is a lot more prominent in figure than it is in bikini and wellness, especially upper body, okay? So a few of these groups breaking down right here, you'll see that's going to be shoulders, that's going to be lats, that's going to be, okay, everything's tying it right into this waist. So very narrow at the waist here, you'll see in this division. And that's really because if you can bring your waist in a lot, right, you shrink down that kind of wherever your waistline is, and there's exercises to do this if you're not familiar with them, you know, vacuums, things like that. There's many ways to actually train that to get that narrow effect. But if you can bring that waist in, and you can also bring out the upper body more, right, through training the lats and training the delts, well, now you've just done, guess what, created this crazy V taper that the judges will, you know, really want to see in figure division, okay? So that's really the upper body portion of figure. It's a lot of that density and that muscle that really creates the shape. We'll talk about conditioning here in a minute before we pop over to the back pose, but let's review a little bit lower body, okay? So lower body development in figure, it becomes really important to have have, you know, good quads, good set of legs going on here, and having these splits. So, you know, quads, they call it the quad because there's 4 heads to the muscle. In figure, you're going to really see them, okay? You really start to see them from a conditioning factor, but also because of the muscularity. You got to have this sweep effect. That's what judges really want to see. They want to see this quad sweep, but not too dramatic and not too crazy, you know, not to the point where it's going to be bulbous, but to the point where it's a nice sweep that shows that kind of aesthetic, and it's really showing just overall a perfect symmetry to the upper body. So in other words, if we got the muscles up top, we got to accentuate it with the lower body muscle down here too. Okay, calves, not a huge focus, but they're going to be, you know, wanting that to match in the quads. Main emphasis of the lower body in figure in this front pose is going to be quads. So let's talk a little bit more now. We talked about how kind of this shape comes together, you know, this kind of figure type V taper, perfect symmetry. And I'm talking about symmetry. When I say symmetry, figure is symmetrical in every way possible. So it's upper to lower, it's going to be symmetrical, right? Everything upper to lower is symmetrical. It's going to be left to right. Everything across the board is going to be symmetrical. It's got to be symmetry, symmetry, symmetry. If you have a muscle group that's lagging in figure, it's going to get noticed. They're going to be scoring you on it, okay? Now, from a conditioning perspective, figure is leaner than other divisions in the women's divisions that are kind of in that ladder, you know, bikini and wellness, and then figure. Figure's where we get a little bit into the actual leaner side of figure, where, you know, we're talking about seeing more muscle now. You can see in the quads, we get a little bit, you know, of this splitting effect. We're seeing more separation here. We're seeing more visible muscle. It's not to the point where it's striated or it's grainy or it's over, you know, overdone, which we will see in actual other women's divisions. Women's physique, for example, women's bodybuilding, we'll start to see some of that. In figure division, it's a cutting effect, right, where you can see the shape of the muscle, you can see the separation, but it's not striated. It's not going to be grainy, and it's not going to be to the point where, you know, it's super vascular and stuff like that. So you'll see that this is, you know, really unique, that she can actually even pull off this conditioning. You know, you're not going to see too much of the actual factor of this is too lean, there's too many cuts, too many striations. It's going to be these nice lines, you know, in the delts and in the abs and things like this, and in the arms and the quads, of course, here in this front pose. We'll talk more about that when we get to the back here in just a sec, but let's pop over to back pose now. Obviously, you know, figure is, you know, they say it's one from the back. They say that about a lot of bodybuilding divisions, but figure is definitely one, and it's right here, and here's why. It's kind of the same V taper we were just talking about, right? This dramatic V taper is what's going to shock the judges every time into knowing that you're a figure athlete, and also one that deserves to be winning, okay? So that V taper look becomes really important, and again, this comes from a lot of the same muscle groups. Now, remember I highlighted when we were talking about the front, I said the lats here, obviously very prominent. That width is really gonna just blow up the back and make such a dramatic tapered aesthetic, it's crazy. But remember, I also said depth, okay? So that's where we get to see some of this here. So if you're looking into the rhomboids and the scaps and the traps and all this kind of coming together, this shows, you know, that depth field. You can see here in the lats too, if you're really looking, it's probably hard to see where you're watching, but you can see there's actual depth to that muscle too. So it's not just about the width, it's about the actual depth, and the judges are looking for that depth. And here, obviously, we get to see the real deltoids, very hypertrophied, very developed. You get to see just how much the shoulders are actually developed in this lateral deltoid, to the point where, you know, we're getting a three-dimensional look at a competitor who's facing away from us, all right? That's what makes figure. This muscularity, this density, this depth, that all that coming together with that shape and that symmetry really is what highlights figure division. Now, lower body. This is where we actually get to see a little bit of the glute ham tie separation be something judges want to see. So you guys, you know, we talk about bikini and wellness. A lot of bikini and wellness athletes are always chasing that glute ham tie separation, even though they don't need it in those divisions. In figure, you need it. You want it. The judges are actually going to be looking for this to see, okay, are the glutes tight, right? Is there any extra body fat there? And then also, are we getting some separation between that glute and that hamstring? And so here on Sid, definitely getting a lot of that. You know, you'll see the separation. You can see the glutes are tight. You'll see also, though, they're not overly muscular to the point where, you know, they're getting squared out too much. They still have this soft look to them. They're, and for the most part, going to be full of density, but not to the point where, again, striations, cuts, all of that. And that's what we see here in the conditioning factor all around too. If she was leaner, and I'm actually going to show you guys in just a second, like like what women's physique looks like for just a second to give you an example. If she was leaner, you'd see a lot of different cuts going on. You see the glutes be very squared off. You'd see a lot of cuts going on here in the glutes, in the hamstrings. You can see little lines here, like I talked about, some soft lines, but not striation. That's what judges want to see. They want to see the conditioning, the separation of the muscle, but they don't want to see the striation. That's what we get in the back. We get it all around here. So really, those are the foundations of what makes figure. You want to have that dramatic V-tapered look. You want to be as symmetrical as you can upper to lower. You want to be as symmetrical as possible left to right, and it's all about this muscle development. That's what makes figure. And also another thing too, right, is that a lot of people think that the more that women gain muscle, the more, you know, they lose their kind of femininity. That's not a factor at all in figure. It's actually very something the judges want to see is you still have, you know, the beauty and the poise and the feminine presentation in the figure division that we see in, you know, some of the other divisions as well. So that is an area of focus for sure. You're not going to see, you know, a lot of bodybuilding type poses in here. You're going to see some front poses, some quarter turns, some back poses, but it's not to the point where, you know, it's focused so far down the path of like, okay, hit a front lat spread or something like that. Okay, so figure division still needs to be feminine, still needs to have all those things coming together and look at it. And again, the conditioning is not over the top. It's not to the point where it's grainy, anything like that. Let me just show you for 2 seconds. If you're still watching, I appreciate you guys. Make sure you subscribe. We got more great stuff coming all the time, and I want to hear your suggestions. You want me to do this for some other divisions? You want me to go more in depth on other topics? Drop it in the comments below. Let me know. Happy to do that for you. But let's look for 2 seconds here just over at what women's physique looks like. Okay, so this is the women's physique winner. Now, in that ladder we were just talking about, right? We're talking about bikini, wellness, figure. Women's physique is going to be right up here, right before women's bodybuilding, which is the top. So right here again, you get to see now, this is kind of where we get to play a little bit of comparison. So you see this women's physique, and I'm not going to do this judging criteria right now, so don't click out if you think I'm going to go another 20 minutes. I'm just saying, you know, this is where we get to see how the difference is, okay? A lot more muscle in women's physique. Overall, some different types of posing. You see more focus on the arms, things like that here. You're also going to see a lot more striation, okay? This is where things start to cut up more. This is where we get leaner, grainier, okay? So when I'm saying figure is not as lean as, you know, women's physique and stuff like that, it's not to say it's not lean. It's very lean. It's leaner than bikini. It's leaner than wellness. It is, though, its own division where it has its own criteria it has to meet. Now, you get a better idea of this from the back pose for sure. So let's see. Boom. There it is, okay? There's figure back pose. There's women's physique back pose. And you'll see the difference here right out the gate in women's physique, muscularity-wise. And this is where you start seeing some of that striation, some of that graininess, some of that separation, that squaring effect of the glutes. So, you know, maybe we'll do a video on women's physique if you guys want to see that. Otherwise, just let me know what you want to hear next, what you want to check out. That's what makes figure. If you are a figure competitor, we train a lot of them with great success. Make sure you check out our free trial and stuff we offer on our website. Tons of free resources for you guys. And yeah, like I said, just let me know what you think of these videos. You guys want more information on what the judges are looking for? You want me to dive deeper? Let me know what it is, and I'm happy to talk about it. All right. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you subscribe. Coach Rye is out.